In this tutorial, I'm going to give you a general tour of the Action App's Digitize toolbar. This toolbar has two main parts: the stitch types, which convert vector art into different types of stitches, and the viewing tools. The first icon here is our run stitch. I just need to have an object in Corel selected, and then I click on my run stitch. A run stitch is just an outline. It is a single line stitch that traces a shape. This is particularly useful for borders. If you have an embroidery design with a lot of fills, you could add a run stitch around certain fills to separate or highlight those objects. The next icon here is the steel stitch. The steel stitch is a border stitch, same as like the run stitch, but with thickness properties. You can see that the steel stitch is also just going to follow our vector path here. Next is our complex fill. The complex fill is a type of fill stitching that will fill an object with stitches set at one consistent stitch angle. So you can see that all of my stitches here are running horizontally across my circle. Complex fills are useful for filling large shapes. Next is the complex fill with steel stitch. This is the same as a complex fill, but it adds a steel border. The steel stitch will be a different color than the fill, and it will sew the complex fill first and then the steel stitch on top of the complex fill. The next tool is our auto satin path. This is another fill tool, but only for filling small and medium size objects. I'm going to go ahead and put an uppercase L on my screen using my Corel Draw text tool. A satin stitch is a very common stitch. It's a fill stitch that has varying angles. So you can see that while this has one consistent angle, this angle will form actually to the object. It's just going back and forth and keeping the stitches perpendicular to the shape. Next is our auto digitizer. The auto digitizer will take whatever vector artwork you have and turn it into embroidery the best it can. It is a good start to your design, but as it is the computer making all the decisions without a human eye, it's not going to be perfect. However, this is a very good tool to give a customer a quick cost estimate for a design, especially if you base your pricing on stitch count. This will be a great way to quote a customer for a project. The auto digitize, however, will not sequence your design, so you will definitely want to do that using your Corel Object Manager. Our next tool is our text tool. To create a text object, you just need to lay down a vector line. To make a perfect straight horizontal line in Corel, you simply take your Bezier tool, click once on your screen, hold down your Control button, and click a second time. And then I click on my text tool, which adds embroidery text to it. It doesn't necessarily need to be a straight line, but that's probably how you're most often going to apply the text. I also have a monogram specific tool. It also needs a vector line to be able to lay on. And you'll see that it does my monogramming here. The monogram tool will do specialty monograms for 1, 2, and 3 letters. Our next button is the Stitches button. Let's go back to this other design. This is going to convert our vector object that is filled with stitch properties and make it into just stitches. So let me go ahead and select this. This is stitches. There we go. So now you can see that this is actually stitches. I can individually move the stitches in my design now. But you should be warned, the Stitches button is similar to converting text to an object. It is a one-way street. I cannot convert this object back into a vector shape now. This next button here is our artwork button. Once I get to this stitches stage, I can't go backwards. But if I'm still in this stage where it is a vector circle with stitch applications applied to it and I want to take it back to just vector, If I click my artwork button, it takes it back to vector. So these are our stitches, all of our stitch icons. These next buttons here are our viewing tools. The show stitch points. This tool, if I have this selected, it's going to show where our needle is physically going in and out of my design. Especially in a complex fill like this, this is actually going to show us the pattern of our stitching. This next icon, the show stitch commands. This is going to show us all of our stitch commands. Commands are operations that an embroidery machine will do other than a stitch, like a trim or a color change. When you turn this feature on, you can see the location of all your commands. The icon that looks like a little needle and thread represents a color change. The icon that looks like a pair of scissors represents a trim. And then the icon here that looks like a stoplight is representing where our design is starting and stopping. The next tool here is our 3D view. It shows us how our text will look once it's stitched out. I can zoom in here. I can zoom out. I just wanted to point out real quick, we had taken this igloo and run it through the auto digitize, and you can see that it chose some of the fills to be satin fill and some to be a complex fill. And ideally, if we were actually going to be stitching this out, we wouldn't want to do something like that. And so that's what I mean when I say that the auto digitize doesn't have a human eye to notice that these are all the same, they're all ice blocks, and you would want them to kind of be done in the same style. I'm going to go ahead and close out of here. Next button here is the Action Apps color palette. This will open up the sidebar here. The Action Apps palette is to edit your colors. The colors in this palette are actual thread brands and thread colors. While I do still have access to my normal Corel palettes here, it's better when I'm using the Easy Stitch software to use the Action Apps palette. Finally, we also have the button right here, which is the Show Action Apps Object Properties. This is going to bring up our Action Apps Object Property sidebar, and this is where I'm going to edit all of my stitch properties. So here, if I click on this text here, this shows me all of my text properties that I can change, my font, how I line it up. If I click on a fill, it shows me my complex fill properties. If I click on the satin, we have our satin properties. And so this is where I'm going to be making all of my changes to my design. So that, and then I also have this drop-down menu where I can access other parts of my design to change, like my pull compensation and my underlay.